Welcome to the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast. This series 3, is focused on using occupational therapy wisdom to support parents with their child's development. So we'll be exploring key areas such as sleep, feeding, toileting, play and communication with insights from experts in occupational therapy and other fields.
Our goal is to normalise the challenges of parenting and provide practical tips and advice. You'll hear from dedicated professionals who will share their expertise and personal experiences to help you navigate the complexities of raising children.
So on today's episode of the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast, looking at OT wisdom for everyday parenting challenges, we are absolutely delighted to have Patricia Flynn. Patricia is a perinatal and paediatric occupational therapist and researcher, and is a family sleep specialist. So sleep is an area for any parent will have been a challenge at some point, I expect. So you're really welcome, Patricia. We're delighted to have you.
Thanks a million, Jen and Nadine.
Just to start, tell us a little bit about your background and why what started you kind of being interested in researching parent and child sleep.
Well, I suppose I've been an OT for ages, all of a sudden, over 20 years. And in those 20 years, I've worked across the lifespan. I started, my first job was actually in palliative care, so end-of-life services. And now I'm working with babies and expectant parents and babies up until about preschool age, so around 4. And I've worked everywhere in between. Primarily mental health, so families around mental health, so child and adolescent and youth mental health. And as every OT knows, at every healthcare setting, sleep is an issue. And I'm a big fan of sleep myself. So really, it's always been something that I've always sought training on and further information reading. But then working with parents of new babies, it really comes to the fore. It's really what parents care about. That and feeding is the primary issue that new parents look for support in. And having my own babies at around the same time, I was working with that population, that group of parents, really kind of brought it up as a personal and professional issue. And I just found the information I was looking for, it just isn't there as an OT, that meaningful evidence-based information that would allow me to make a positive impact with parents just wasn't there. So I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of courses, and I just decided to formalize that learning and also see if I could find the answers that I felt weren't already there.
Patricia, a lot of us as occupational therapists work with children with additional needs. Where would you start with disrupted sleep patterns, some practical strategies? Where would a parent who maybe isn't accessing occupational therapy, where would they start off with? Where would the starting point be?
Well, I think parents and children, whether you have a disability or not, whether whatever's going on in your life, you recognize your own expertise as the parent of that child. So sleep is one of those areas. We all do it. We all have an instinctive wisdom around sleep. And I think because there's so much information and opinions out there, parents have lost confidence in their own instincts and their own expertise. So what I would say, and it's my mantra, you'll hear me say it a lot in the next 20 minutes or so, is you tune out all those opinions and tune into your own child. So especially children with additional needs, those parents are such experts in the system, such experts in their own child's needs, that what we can do to help is say, okay, let's tune out all those opinions, tune into your own child and see what has worked in the past. What do you think will work in the future? And then let's see if we can help you support your to meet your child's specific sleep needs. So the first step is looking at what are your individual child's sleep needs. Are they getting enough sleep? Is their sleep interrupted? And if not, then looking at strategies that you think will work, irrespective of whether people will say, well, that's the right strategy or not, or I suppose the dominant opinions. So really bringing it back to family-centered care and supporting parents to trust their own instincts.
Okay. And can we maybe hone in then just, Patricia, on, settling, starting off the process of, okay, a child is having difficulty with actually getting to sleep. could we look at just like very simple takeaway points that a parent could maybe think about if that was the case, the difficulty in their home?
Definitely. I think this is where OTs, this is our area of expertise, and we need to reclaim it away from just do's and don'ts around sleep hygiene that every parent knows. Every parent who has a child with sleep difficulties will have Googled sleep hygiene. So they're coming to you with that knowledge, and taking it away from that and looking at the individual participation in sleep preparation activities. So looking at, tell me about your sleep routine. Is there an issue there, do you think? And parents will very quickly say, there is, it's different every night, or it's stressful. And they say, no, we've got a beautiful routine and I love it. It's this time of connection. And then you move on to sleep participation activities and say, well, are your child is waking up? Is your child waking up frequently? Do you have to feed them frequently during the night? And looking at that. And if you want, I suppose, one takeaway practical thing that will apply across the board is at nighttime, aim for calm around the same time. But in the morning, aim to get up at the same time. So aim, first of all, to wake at the same time, because you can't force your child to sleep. You can't force yourself to sleep. And the more you try to go to sleep, the harder it is to go to sleep. So aim for calm around the same time at night, not to get to sleep, and then aim to get up at the same time. And that naturally usually will help introduce a bit of predictability into the sleep routine. And also just getting that sleep times right. So are you expecting your child to sleep more than they need to? Because oftentimes people, again, accessing generic information or people's strong opinions are told your child should sleep 7 to 7. Whereas actually we all have different sleep needs. We're born with different sleep needs. The sleep needs of a newborn baby can be hugely different from one child to the next. And the same with adults and same with children. So there's no one rule for what time they should go to sleep. You match your child's sleep needs and then look at introducing that routine and predictability, which takes out any stress. We'll aim for calm at whatever time suits, and then we get up around the same time.
I think that really resonates with me, Patricia, because I remember when my children were young, so much guilt that I wasn't doing the right thing, and so much pressure of there was particular methods, and they leaving them to cry was one of them, and you have to do this. And I remember sitting outside, like literally crying, going, I'm doing the wrong thing, and feeling bad about that. And absolutely that probably rubbed off then on. If I'm not calm, my kids aren't calm. So I really like what you're saying. But as a new parent particularly, or a parent with a child who's got additional needs, it's very hard to trust yourself, isn't it? Because you kind of feel that you don't have the expertise sometimes, and there has to be a magic answer.
I love what you just said, Jen, because that's a shared experience. Almost all parents of babies and children, irrespective of their level of need, share that experience of generalizing their children's sleep performance to their own parenting competence. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Parents so often come to me for support and they say, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I need to fix this sleep. And actually sleep, it's the same as our day to day. If we want good sleep every night, we're expecting to have good days every day. And that's not how life is. So sleep reflects what's going on during the day. And parents, a lot of people have interest in telling parents that sleep can be fixed and that you're doing things wrong. The amount of products and support services around sleep, very expensive. Sleep feeds into that. So there's an interest in keeping parents in that space where they don't trust their own instincts and they have to buy expertise and buy supports and equipment. And I think it's very much the same with parents of children with additional needs. Then the system, because they're on the receiving end of advice all the time, the receiving end of opinions all the time, that trust in their own instinct is eroded. And I think sleep really has fallen behind a lot of areas in early intervention, in that family-centered care really hasn't come into sleep advice, in that the professional's role should be to bolster up that confidence in their own expertise and their own skills, because we're not there at 2 a.m. in the morning when they have to problem solve how to support their child back to sleep. So really our role should be bolstering up those instincts. Say, you know your child better than I do. You care. Nobody else in the world cares for your child as much as you do. And there is expertise and wisdom in that. And you will have bad nights, and that's not your fault. And you will have good nights as well, and that's natural sleep, irrespective of your level of need or any diagnosis or your age. All our sleep goes through phases where it's disturbed, and then where we get back into a state where we're meeting our sleep needs again. So normalizing sleep disruptions and then again kind of reassuring parents that they bolstering up that instincts. But it's very difficult. I think there's a lot of external noise, especially online as well, saying around all aspects of parenting, saying you're doing this wrong, don't do this, if you're doing this, stop. And that's how they draw parents in who want the best for their children.
There's also that voice of well-meaning family and friends as well as external. So you're getting opinions from all sides, and it is so hard to block that out and think about the individual needs of your own child. And Patricia, you talked there about we have good nights and bad nights, and sometimes when you're in that cycle of all the bad nights, you think it's never, ever, ever going to end. You're never going to get sleep. We're going to have this chronic sleep issue. What advice would you give to parents who feel really at the end of their tether and don't have the energy to make any differences because they are so sleep deprived?
And I think that's exactly it, Aidy. And that's why my research was on parent-infant sleep, is that especially in the first 2 years, the infant sleep is inseparable from the parent's sleep. And you have to, and I think a lot of the interventions at the moment or the advice to parents will either prioritize the parent's sleep or prioritize the child's sleep. And really it is an interactive system where if you don't have a situation where a parent is getting good sleep and their child isn't. So it's really, and again, it's so important for a parent to get good sleep in order to care for their child, to interact and have that emotional connection with them during the day and to be playful and to be able to interact, which then drives their social emotional development as well. So my research that took, I synthesized parents' opinions from all around the world, and what they showed was when parents aren't getting that sleep, it's difficult for them then to strengthen their relationship with their child. And we're learning so much more about how important that relationship and communication is, with their children. So it's really recognizing the interaction between parent and child's sleep, and then sitting with the parent and saying, how can we support both systems? But saying to the parent, especially mothers, it has to be said that your sleep is important. If you prioritize your sleep, your child is not going to suffer. You're not saying that your child's sleep is less important. It's so, and it's about problem solving. Is there external support? Can you take naps during the daytime? How can we adapt your daytime routine so that you get some rest as well? Can you sleep when the baby sleeps? If not, then, and it's a frequent phenomenon where the baby sleeps and mom is awake and can't get that sleep because there's so much anxiety. So addressing expectations, addressing ways to adapt to this new baby, and usually the 3-4 months at the start can be the really difficult time. And then telling parents what to expect, that their baby's sleep is changing so quickly that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So really taking a holistic approach and seeing what support systems we have for parents, and then I suppose normalizing the frequent waking that little babies have, and saying it's not their fault. So it's not a reflection of your parenting. And oftentimes that reduction in anxiety, reduction in stress can lead to an improvement in sleep, but also very practical stuff like please rest if you can, and get support from as many people as possible, and let your partner do a bit of night care as well.
I think that takes a big mind shift for a lot of people, in that I remember everybody said that to me, you know, when the baby's sleeping, have a rest. And I was like, well, when the baby's sleeping, that's my chance to run around and do the laundry and do the washing up and try and have some semblance of normality in my house. But it was kind of that idea of what is normal, and maybe expectations need to shift in those earlier stages, that, you know, expectations, you don't have to do all of the things that you might do when you have full sleep and you don't have a new baby in the house. But that does take a bit of a shift. And I suppose there might be challenges as well for parents who are doing it alone and who maybe don't have that support around them. So you kind of said reaching out for support. Where can people look for that, or are there any kind of options that would support people?
That's something, and people hate the advice, sleep when your baby's asleep, because it's like, well, I have to go to the toilet and I have to eat, and, you know, you do have to do some things around the house, whatever. It is really difficult when you have a new baby, and that's the starting point that I always say to parents, that this is a shared experience. It's really isolating. It's really difficult. And what you've expected on your maternity leave, maybe, it doesn't reflect the reality. So people say, what are you doing on your maternity leave? What are you going to do? And, you know, people think they're going to do extra study, or, you know, and the reality is that they don't have that time. And when your baby's asleep, they need support often. So you have a baby who'll only sleep in arms. And I work on an individual basis, saying, okay, let's look at the resources around you. And a lot of the work I do is with expat parents living in Brussels. So there's no family around them. They have and that was the situation I was in as well. No family around, but looking at, if needs be, looking at a carrier for your baby. So at least you have your arms free and you can get up and move around when they're asleep. There's looking at communities, reach out to mother and baby communities, that you've at least, if not, if you don't have the support, you have the empathy, you know, that this is difficult. And then I think oftentimes mothers can be reluctant to let their partners do the night caring as well, especially if they're breastfeeding, and looking around strategies around that. And I work with a breastfeeding consultant as well. So if that's necessary, to look at different feeding rate strategies. So maybe we can look at expressing milk and giving a bottle, or, you know, that dad will do it. But letting go, it's even when mums are exhausted, sometimes letting go and allowing someone to give them space, even to go out for a walk. I think that is often the big mind shift that needs to happen as well.
Patricia, could we ask about sleep environments, and also considering maybe older children, so not just babies? I know that there will be parents who are parents of children with additional needs who are interested in what is the optimal type of environment that we should aim for. What little practical tips or strategies would you give when considering trying to create a really sleep-inducing space?
I think the first thing to do is just acknowledge the complexity of the sleep environments. So again, stepping away, every parent who's in front of an OT or who's listening now will know that the lighting should be dark, that it should be an old-fashioned room, that it should be a comfortable temperature if their child is nervous about light, but a night light. So I think that information is so easily accessible and very important, but we need to, I suppose, step beyond that and acknowledge how flexible, I suppose, home sleep environments are. And what I mean by that is, with young children, oftentimes the child will start off in one bed and they'll go to sleep in their own bed, and halfway through the night they will come into the parents' bed, and you've three in the bed, but mum has a podcast in the morning, so mum needs sleep, and we get out of the bed and into the spare room, and then you'll have the sibling who wakes up and finds they're alone in their room and doesn't want to sleep alone, and will come into the spare bed to mum. And that's the way every family with young children, or so many families with young children, sleep, and that is normal. And I think oftentimes when a parent with a child with additional needs, who maybe has anxiety, will describe that to a health professional, the health professional automatically will say, okay, let's try and look at keeping your child in their own bed. Now, if that's what the parent thinks will help both themselves and their child, absolutely look for strategies. Whereas if that is working, let's acknowledge that that's what many, many parents of small children are doing. So that's the complexity of the flexible sleep environment. Is it working for you? If yes, then continue with that. How do you know if it's working? Is your child well? And are they tired in the morning? Are they functioning? Is there, in terms of their interactions, in terms of their mood, in terms of their attention? So whereas a lot of times in health professional context, that will be assumed to be a problem. So you ask the parent, is that a problem? So I suppose, first of all, in terms of the physical environment, or like I said, in terms of the physical environment, acknowledge that kind of flexibility. And then the next thing is to look at the relational environment. So the relationship between yourself and your child really comes to the fore at certain pressure points, and going to sleep is one of them. So if you're frustrated, if there's a level of frustration that you feel your child should be going to sleep by themselves, or if there's a level of anxiety in your child that they can't leave you go, because sleep is a separation. Your child has to feel safe and secure in order to go to sleep. You have to feel confident that your child is safe and secure before they go to sleep. So any medical issues, if there's anxiety, and it's true for children who have medical needs, it's true for children who maybe spend time in the NICU, in the intensive care unit, children with apnea, any of those children with feeding difficulties, or any positioning aids, there may be an anxiety on the part of the parent. There may be an separation anxiety on part of the child, whatever. But talking about those relationship, there may be frustrations on either side. Why won't you stay with me? Or why won't you leave me go? And that interferes with bedtime routine. And then, like the sociocultural environment we're talking about, is how do you identify who culturally? And culture is so complex these days as well, because you have online tribes, and online tribes often dictate, where your child sleeps. Are you a bed sharer, or are you a sleep trainer, or, and talking these through. And I suppose as a professional, you think, oh my goodness, how can I deal with the complexity of this? And how you do that is you get the parent to tell the story of bedtime through the activities, and it will all come out: their beliefs, their values, what has worked in the past, what their ideal situation is, and that's what you work with. So that complex environment of all the levels, I think that's why OTs need to be in this space, because we understand and we're comfortable with that complexity.
So it's back to individualisation, isn't it? Really, it's moving away from the generic advice and finding what works for you and for your family, and being non-judgmental about it.
I'm going to put that on a t-shirt, Aileen. Exactly. That's exactly it. It's about individualization, and sleep is a subjective experience. And it's so culturally influenced by culture. So there's no right or wrong. If there's any, and I suppose that's not promoted, because if there's no right or wrong, then you can't fix it. Sleep is never fixed. There's no answer. You can certainly improve things when things are not working for the child or the parent or the family. But it is the expertise and the experience in that subjective occupational experience lies within the family. And it's our job to say, okay, I know sleep. So I know my neurobiology of sleep. I know my development, how development impacts on sleep, and I know how maybe different conditions or medications might play out in sleep. But you know your sleep, and you know your family, and you know your ideal situation, and you know when you've all felt well. Everybody knows what good sleep is, and everybody knows when they're not getting it as well. And parents know that of their children. So it's a subjective experience, and that's what OTs are comfortable with. We're comfortable with that. Separate to age is a factor, and separate to diagnosis, it can be a factor, but it's not the primary factor.
I do think it is helpful to have some kind of benchmarks though, because I remember one of my children who was diagnosed with celiac disease when she was about 14 months. And I was walking the floors with her, you know, when she was about a year old, and she just was not sleeping at all through the night. And now in hindsight, that was in relation to the fact that she was very unwell, but I didn't know that at the time. But I remember somebody saying to me, you know, that's not normal to still be walking the floors, you know, at the stage of a 1-year-old. And I was so tired. I was like, I hadn't even clocked that, you know, what stage should I be at? And I suppose that's where the online communities come in a little bit as well, that we're kind of like looking for an answer, or, you know, what's going on? Is this normal compared to other people? So it sounds like having a health professional who's got the real kind of understanding of developmental stages can help to sort that out, rather than going for the, well, my friend down the road had this experience, so I should be having that experience.
Yeah, and I think that's why I've called my practice No Sleep, is because it's an KNOW. Because first of all, it's the empathy, as in, I know how hard it is when you're not getting any sleep. And then but the important thing is to know your sleep. And while norms, the difficult thing with sleep is that norms don't reflect healthy sleep, because it's what most people are getting. But are most people getting good, healthy sleep in our society at the moment? We're not sure. But what I've got in my research, or what I've found in my research, is the range of sleep. Of course, there's a range of healthy sleep for different ages. And what's helpful to know is that in the first 3 months of life, the range of normal sleep is so varied that really what you need to do is tune into your child. Are they interacting well? Are they feeding well? And it's the same then. It gets a bit more, the range is narrower, but there's always a range. So are you within this range of, you know, average sleep duration? But also, what do you think? Is your child getting enough sleep? Can you manage the walking up and down? You know, does it feel like this is the right thing for you to be doing it at age 1 or whatever age it is? So it's really looking at those ranges, knowing that every child within those ranges is different, and then tapping into your own instincts. Does this feel like you're getting good sleep? And does it feel like your child is going to sleep with relative ease? So most children need support to go to sleep, whether that's just the bedtime routine, reassurance, because it is that separation. But does it feel, is it too demanding on you? So you define whether it's a problem or not.
And you said sleep changes as well. So you kind of think you've nailed it. Yes, we're sleeping through the night, and then that might shift, and that's part of the process as well.
That's part of the process as well. And that's where this concept of sleep regression comes in, and really doesn't explain what is happening. A sleep regression, and I've seen it put terror into the hearts of parents, where they think, I've just nailed it and now there's a sleep regression, I'm going to go backwards. Whereas that's not actually what's happening at all. Your sleep, especially in the first 2 years, but throughout life, is changing all the time. So your sleep needs are reducing, and a newborn baby sleep needs, they're over 24 hours. There can be 2 hours difference by the time they reach the 4-month mark. So, and this is the famous, 4-month sleep regression, whereas actually it's such a progression in development. What's happening is their circadian system is actually neurologically mature. So those connections are made. They're now producing their own melatonin. Their sleep is moving more towards nighttime, which is great. It'll take about 2 years or more to get there, but they're moving towards a more predictable sleep routine. And then the parent has to adapt to that. And there's so much going on. So it's a progression, and with every progression, there's a bit of disruption to sleep. And then you'll move into a new phase. And that's true of at any stage of childhood. And of course, children are always getting sick. They're starting school. They're going on holidays. The clocks change. All these things, you have a disruption. And it's not easy. but you will come out the other end. And oftentimes people are given strategies to do during those disruptions. Their child is working their way spontaneously out of those regressions, and then they think the strategy worked. But actually, it's trusting their child that, you know, you're getting better, or you've mastered rolling now. You're not doing it in your sleep anymore, or in the case for older children, you've settled into school now, or, you know, whatever it is that is disrupting their sleep. So what's going on during the day is reflected during the night. And it's I suppose there's some comfort to know when you've adolescents or children who don't tell you what's going on in school, that if their sleep is disrupted, it's a key that there's something else going on during the day. So
processing new developments, even, because I would often find that I would hear from parents saying that they go through a really disrupted sleep pattern and phase, but yet when they come out to the other side, then there's lots of new milestones met, and it is worth it when they look back on that phase.
Absolutely. And you can see it in younger children. It's really acknowledged by Brazelton with the touch points, or the or the Wonder Weeks kind of acknowledge that. But with older children as well, when they're pushed to learn, whether it's language or motor skills, that is rewiring of the brain. And when we process learning, sleep, we think, has a lot to do with processing learning, processing memories, integrating the learning. So anytime you're pushed to develop and learn, oftentimes that will then be processed to sleep. But also it increases sleep pressure, so that your sleep fundamentally changes. You'll be exhausted. You'll go to sleep maybe a bit easier when you've done that involved learning. That cognitive load will actually improve sleep sometimes as well, but it changes, and then you get into a more predictable period again.
Even that's like tweaking language is not a regression, it's actually progression. My child is developing. That just changes the way that you view that, which takes the pressure off. That
especially if your child has additional needs. The word regression strikes fear into your heart. It's an awful word to use, and it's not reflected in the research at all. In fact, the opposite. It has been disproven that there's any regression at all.
So in terms of research, Patricia, for you, what are the next steps, or what needs to be explored further in relation to sleep and possibly occupational therapy as well?
Well, at the moment, I'm focusing on getting the word out there. I want OTs to claim sleep. I want OTs to assess or evaluate sleep and focus their interventions in an occupation-centered way. So no longer taking other disciplines, questionnaires or checklists, and no longer taking other disciplines approach to sleep, because so often what we're doing is we're tracking norms that maybe don't adhere to our clients' cultural beliefs or their own sleep needs. And then we're giving oftentimes structured, fixed kind of timetables to parents, or routines to parents, or we're giving them lists of do's and don'ts. And really that never sat well with me as an OT. So what I'm trying to, I suppose I'm developing training around focusing on occupation-centered sleep support, which looks at sleep preparation activities and sleep participation activities, and really taking parents' expertise and their subjective experience and problem solving in the way we do best, and helping OTs feel confident that that's a valid evidence-based approach as well.
Patricia, this has been so helpful. Earlier on, you described a musical bed scenario, which is exactly what is happening in my house at the minute. And I think even just that, coming back to listening to our own instincts as parents and taking the individual as they are in front of you, and not trying to shoehorn into some sort of pattern or expectation that's unrealistic. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today, on your tips and practical strategies as well.
And Patricia, if people are struggling with sleep in their household, they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely, yeah. My new website is No Sleep, so KNOW sleep.org. So they can get in contact with me there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a million.
that's all for today's episode on the Irish Occupational Therapy podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and found it informative and engaging. If you've any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at irishotpodcast@gmail.com or connect on Instagram or Facebook.
And remember to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. If you found this episode helpful, please leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback is important and helps us to improve the show, so please do leave it. Thank you for listening to the Irish Occupational Therapy podcast, hosted by myself, Jen Trechek.
And myself, Aileen Rutledge.
We look forward to sharing more insights and knowledge with you in future episodes. Until then, take care.